Ever met someone who seemed unremarkable, only to discover they were secretly a total boss? Well, get ready for the story of Jae-won Kim, a building owner who chose humility over flaunting his wealth, driving an old beat-up car. This made him the perfect, unsuspecting target for Nara, a brand-new, ambitious colleague who loved to mock his modest appearance. You're about to witness a clash of egos, a series of escalating humiliations, and a reveal so satisfying it'll make you rethink everything you thought you knew about judging a book by its cover. Trust me, the karma in this one is legendary. The morning sun, a pale, hesitant pearl, struggled to pierce the dense urban tapestry of Seoul, casting long, distorted shadows across the towering glass and steel edifices that defined the city's ambition. Within one such anonymous, yet undeniably imposing structure, Jae-won Kim began his day, much as he had for the past 5 years. His routine was a meticulously crafted ballet of quiet efficiency, a testament to a man who preferred to exist in the periphery, observing rather than being observed. He arrived punctually at 7:30 a.m., his ancient but immaculately maintained Hyundai Elantra, a relic from a bygone era, quietly humming into its designated spot in the vast company parking lot. The car, a muted gray that had seen better decades, was a stark contrast to the gleaming luxury sedans and SUVs that surrounded it, a silent testament to Jae-won's chosen anonymity. Its faded paint and slightly worn interior were badges of honor for him, symbols of a deliberate decision to eschew the flashy displays of wealth that often permeated the corporate world. Jae-won himself was an enigma to most of his colleagues at Horizon Innovations. His suits, though always crisp and well-fitting, were understated, lacking the designer labels favored by many. His dark hair was neatly combed, his glasses framed a pair of intelligent, observant eyes, and his smile, when it emerged, was gentle and genuine, a rare flicker of warmth in an often impersonal environment. He was a manager in the strategic planning department, a role he performed with quiet diligence and an almost uncanny ability to dissect complex problems with elegant simplicity. Yet, despite his competence, he never sought the limelight, never pushed for promotions, content to contribute from the shadows. His desk, nestled in a quiet corner of the open-plan office, was always orderly, a reflection of his meticulous mind. A small potted succulent was its only adornment, a splash of green in a world of muted tones. As he settled in, the familiar scent of brewing coffee wafted from the communal kitchen, a comforting harbinger of the day to come. He greeted the early risers with a soft "Annyeonghaseyo," his voice a low, pleasant baritone that rarely rose above a conversational hum. Among these early birds was Mina Lee, a junior analyst in his department, a bright-eyed woman in her late 20s who admired Jae-won's calm demeanor and unwavering professionalism. Mina, with her practical bob and earnest expression, often found herself gravitating towards Jae-won's desk, drawn by his approachable aura. "Morning, Mr. Kim," Mina offered, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips as she placed her own coffee mug on her desk. Another early start. Jae-won looked up, his glasses glinting. "Good morning, Mina." The early bird, as they say, catches the worm. His smile was fleeting but warm, a small comfort in the bustling quiet of the pre-rush office. Mina often wondered about Jae-won. He was consistently kind, surprisingly insightful, and possessed a quiet confidence that belied his unassuming exterior. He never spoke of his family, his weekends, or his aspirations, maintaining a professional distance that was both respectful and, at times, a little mysterious. Later that morning, as the office filled with the low thrum of keyboards and hushed conversations, Mr. Han, the stern but fair HR manager, walked past Jae-won's desk. Mr. Han, a man who rarely displayed overt emotion, paused, his gaze sweeping over Jae-won's focused profile. A flicker, a fleeting, almost imperceptible knowing glance, passed across Mr. Han's usually impassive face. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, swallowed by the demands of his role. But for a keen observer, it might have hinted at a deeper understanding, a recognition of something more profound beneath Jae-won's humble facade. It was a silent acknowledgement, a secret shared only between the two men, that Jae-won Kim was far more than just another diligent employee at Horizon Innovations. The old Elantra in the parking lot was merely a prop in a carefully orchestrated play, a shield against the superficial judgments of the corporate world, allowing him to observe the true nature of the people within his domain, unburdened by the weight of his true identity. Before we dive deeper, I'm super curious. Where in the world are you watching this from? Let me know in the comments below. The following week brought a new dynamic to Horizon Innovations in the form of Nara Park. Her arrival was less an entrance and more a declaration, a vibrant splash of color in the usually subdued corporate palette. She was a whirlwind of carefully curated style, a testament to the latest trends in Seoul's unforgiving fashion landscape. Her tailored blazer, a bold shade of emerald green, perfectly complemented her sharp, intelligent features and her immaculately styled hair, which cascaded in sleek waves around her shoulders. She carried herself with an air of undeniable confidence, her every movement purposeful, her gaze direct and unwavering. Nara, in her late 20s, had been hired as a senior marketing specialist, a role she clearly intended to leverage to its fullest potential. From the moment she stepped into the department, Nara radiated an almost palpable ambition. Her voice, articulate and melodious, quickly filled the air with carefully constructed sentences, punctuated by confident pronouncements on market strategies and consumer engagement. She made it a point to introduce herself to everyone, her handshakes firm, her smiles bright and practiced, yet beneath the veneer of professional charm lay a sharp, evaluative eye. Nara was a keen observer, not of character, but of status. She quickly assessed the office hierarchy, categorizing individuals based on their perceived influence, their sartorial choices, and the brand of their handbags or watches. To her, these external markers were definitive indicators of success, talent, and worth. "It's a pleasure to join such a dynamic team," she announced during her initial team meeting, her gaze sweeping across the room, lingering slightly longer on the senior executives. Her words were smooth, designed to impress, and indeed, many were taken by her polished presentation. She spoke of her past achievements with a confident ease, weaving tales of successful campaigns and ambitious projects, leaving no doubt as to her capabilities. Yet, there was an underlying current of judgment in her observations, a subtle dismissiveness towards anything she deemed less than exceptional. She quickly formed alliances with those she perceived as rising stars, engaging them in animated discussions about industry trends and future opportunities. Her interactions were calculated, each conversation a strategic move in her personal game of corporate chess. Her desk, unlike Jae-won's minimalist setup, soon became a display of stylish accessories, a designer pen holder, a sleek branded notebook, and a vase with a single elegant white lily. These were not mere office supplies, but extensions of her carefully crafted image, symbols of her refined taste and aspirational lifestyle. Nara quickly noticed Jae-won Kim, not for his quiet competence, but for his inconspicuousness. He was a man who blended into the background, his humble demeanor and understated attire, failing to register on her internal radar of important people. To Nara, Jae-won was simply the quiet manager from strategic planning, a figure who seemed content with his modest existence, lacking the drive and ambition she considered essential for success in a competitive world like Horizon Innovations. She observed his old-fashioned glasses, his slightly worn briefcases, and the general lack of flash about him, and subconsciously, she dismissed him. He didn't fit her mental model of a successful individual, let alone someone who could hold any significant power or influence within the company. She was completely unaware that the man she was already beginning to categorize as unremarkable was, in fact, the very foundation upon which the entire building they occupied stood, a profound irony that was yet to dramatically unfold. The crisp autumn air of a Tuesday morning carried a hint of impending winter, and with it, a particular chill that seemed to seep into the very bones of Seoul. The company parking lot, usually a bustling symphony of arriving vehicles, was particularly crowded that day, forcing cars to squeeze into tighter spots. Jae-won, navigating his trusty aged Hyundai Elantra with practiced ease, found a space near the far end, a little further from the main entrance than usual. He parked, the familiar thrum of the engine silencing as he turned the key, a small, nostalgic smile playing on his lips. This car had been with him through so much, a silent companion in his journey. As he emerged, adjusting his tie, he noticed a small cluster of colleagues gathered near the entrance, chatting before the official start of the workday. Among them was Nara Park, her vibrant emerald green blazer a beacon against the muted tones of the asphalt and concrete. She was animated, her laughter bright and melodic, drawing the attention of those around her. Jaewon, true to his nature, simply nodded a polite greeting as he walked past, heading towards the glass entrance doors. However, as he passed, Nara's gaze, sharp and evaluative, swept across the parking lot. Her eyes, initially scanning for a glimpse of a luxury model, landed squarely on Jaewon's Elantra. A flicker of disdain crossed her features, quickly followed by a smirk. She turned to the small group, which included Mina Lee, and lowered her voice, though not quite enough to prevent it from carrying on the crisp morning air. "Oh, look at that," she began, a theatrical sigh escaping her lips. "Is that really someone's car? I mean, seriously, in a company like Horizon Innovations, you'd expect a certain standard, wouldn't you?" Her eyes still fixed on the Elantra, then subtly shifted towards Jaewon's retreating back. "It just screams lack of ambition, doesn't it? Or perhaps stuck in the past. I mean, if you can't even upgrade your car, what does that say about your drive to innovate in your career?" She chuckled, a light, dismissive sound that grated on Mina's ears. "It's like driving a museum piece to a tech conference. A bit out of place, don't you think?" Several colleagues exchanged uncomfortable glances. One or two offered weak, non-committal smiles, unsure how to respond to Nara's bluntness. Mina, however, felt a sudden flush of heat rise to her cheeks. She knew Nara was referring to Jaewon's car, and she felt an immediate, uncomfortable pang of discomfort. It wasn't just rude, it felt personal, a judgment not just on a car, but on the man who drove it. Mina knew Jaewon was a kind and intelligent person, and his car had never struck her as anything more than a practical choice. Jaewon, who had just reached the entrance, paused for a fraction of a second, his back still to them. He heard Nara's words, every syllable, clear as a bell. A quiet, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, a subtle curve that no one saw. It was a knowing smile, one of deep amusement and perhaps a touch of weary acceptance. He didn't react, didn't turn around, didn't offer a defense. Instead, he pushed open the glass doors and stepped into the building, leaving Nara's words to hang in the chilly air, a testament to her superficiality and a harbinger of the greater irony yet to unfold. Mina watched him go, then turned a cool, disapproving gaze back to Nara, a silent rebuke that, predictably, went unnoticed by the new marketing specialist, who was already moving on to her next topic of conversation, completely oblivious to the depth of her misjudgment. Nara Park's initial snide remark about Jaewon's car was not an isolated incident. It was merely the opening salvo in what quickly became a sustained campaign of subtle, and at times not so subtle digs. Her observations, always delivered with a veneer of well-meaning concern or professional advice, began to pepper team meetings, coffee breaks, and casual lunch conversations. She had a particular knack for framing her critiques as constructive feedback, making them difficult to challenge directly, without appearing defensive or petty. During a team brainstorming session on cost-saving measures, for instance, Nara piped up, her voice sweet as honey. "I think it's crucial for us, as employees of a forward-thinking company, to always project an image of success and modernity, even in our personal choices, like our vehicles. It reflects on the company's brand. Wouldn't you agree? Perhaps some of us." She paused, her eyes briefly flicking towards Jaewon, who was diligently taking notes. "Could consider upgrading to something more current, more aspirational. It shows ambition." The implication hung heavy in the air, a thinly veiled jab at Jaewon's modest lifestyle and unambitious choices. Jaewon, without missing a beat, simply continued writing, his expression unreadable, a picture of calm composure. Later, by the coffee machine, as colleagues discussed weekend plans, Nara interjected, "Oh, I'm heading to a new luxury resort outside the city. It's important to invest in experiences to live a little, don't you think? Some people, and here, her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, though loud enough for Jae-won, who was standing a few feet away, to hear, are just content with the bare minimum. They don't aim for the stars. It's a shame, really, such untapped potential. Her words, though not directly naming Jae-won, were clearly aimed at his perceived lack of materialistic ambition, his quiet contentment often misinterpreted as a lack of drive. Jae-won, for his part, maintained an almost stoic composure. He never rose to the bait, never offered a retort, never even acknowledged Nara's pointed remarks, with anything more than a polite, distant nod if their eyes happened to meet. His focus remained squarely on his work, his dedication unwavering. He seemed to possess an inner reservoir of calm, an unshakable sense of self that Nara's superficial barbs could not penetrate. He understood that engaging would only validate her perspective, and he had no interest in playing her game. He saw her for what she was, ambitious, yes, but also deeply insecure, reliant on external validation. However, the office atmosphere began to feel strained. The casual camaraderie that had once characterized the department started to fray at the edges. Colleagues grew uncomfortable with Nara's constant need to highlight perceived shortcomings, particularly when directed at someone as genuinely kind and hardworking as Jae-won. Whispers followed Nara's departures. From conversations, a quiet hum of disapproval that she, in her self-absorption, rarely noticed. Mina Lee, in particular, found Nara's behavior increasingly difficult to stomach. She often found herself subtly, yet firmly, trying to defend Jae-won. During one lunch, after Nara had just finished a monologue about the importance of keeping up appearances, Mina interjected, "You know, Mr. Kim's work ethic is unparalleled. He's incredibly meticulous and always goes the extra mile. I think true. Success isn't just about what you own, but what you contribute." Her words were met with appreciative nods from others at the table, a silent rebuke to Nara's materialistic worldview. Nara, caught off guard, merely offered a dismissive wave of her hand. "Of course, dedication is important, but so is presentation, Mina. Always remember that." Despite Mina's efforts and the growing discomfort among other colleagues, Nara remained oblivious, her arrogance blinding her to the true sentiment circulating around her. She continued her veiled attacks, convinced she was merely offering helpful advice or insightful observations, completely unaware that each word she uttered chipped away at her own professional standing, slowly building a damning case against herself in the eyes of everyone, especially the unassuming man she so casually ridiculed. The stage was being set, not for Jae-won's humiliation, but for Nara's own profound, self-inflicted downfall. As the weeks turned into months, a subtle shift began to occur in Mina Lee's perception of Jae-won Kim. Nara's relentless, though often indirect, criticisms had, ironically, made Mina more attuned to Jae-won, pushing her to observe him with a new protective lens. And what she began to notice were small, incongruous details that chipped away at the image of the unambitious manager Nara had so forcefully painted. One particularly warm afternoon, Mina was returning from an errand to the ground floor when she spotted Jae-won in the lobby, engaged in a hushed conversation with a man in a hard hat and a safety vest, clearly a building contractor. What struck Mina wasn't just the privacy of their exchange, tucked away in a quiet alcove near the service elevators, but the body language of the contractor. He stood with a deference that bordered on subservience, his head slightly bowed, listening intently as Jae-won spoke in his usual calm, measured tone. The contractor gestured with his hands, indicating parts of the ceiling, his brow furrowed in concern, but his posture remained respectful, almost reverent. He nodded vigorously at Jae-won's words, scribbling notes on a pad before finally bowing deeply as Jae-won concluded the conversation. It was an interaction far too formal, too respectful, for a mere employee discussing a building issue with a contractor. Mina paused, hidden behind a large potted plant, a knot of curiosity tightening in her stomach. Who was Jae-won to command such respect from a contractor? Another incident occurred during a rare visit from Mr. Park, a notoriously aloof and high-ranking official from a rival. yet affiliated department within the larger corporate group. Mr. Park, known for his brusque manner and selective attention, was making his rounds, a trail of junior executives scurrying behind him. As he swept through their department, his eyes, usually focused straight ahead, suddenly landed on Jaewon, who was simply walking from his desk to the printer. To Mina's astonishment, Mr. Park paused, his entourage halting abruptly behind him. A rare, almost hesitant smile touched his lips. "Ah, Mr. Kim," he began, his voice surprisingly soft, a stark contrast to his usual booming tone. "Good to see you. I trust everything is running smoothly." He even inclined his head slightly, a gesture of respect Mina had never seen him bestow upon anyone below an executive director. Jaewon, ever composed, offered a polite, "Yes, Mr. Park, thank you, all is well." "Mr." Park nodded, a flicker of something akin to admiration in his eyes, before continuing his tour, leaving Mina utterly bewildered. These were not isolated incidents. Mina began to recall other fleeting moments. The unusual speed with which a facilities request Jaewon made was handled, the way the building's security staff offered him a subtle, almost imperceptible nod as he entered, the slight, deferential tone in Mr. Han's voice when he spoke to Jaewon in private. Each piece was a fragment of a puzzle, and as Mina pieced them together, a startling, yet still incomplete picture began to emerge. Jaewon Kim, the quiet, unassuming manager with the old car, was clearly more than he seemed. He moved with an unspoken authority, a quiet influence that permeated the very fabric of the building. Her curiosity grew into a protective instinct. She found Nara's snide remarks even more infuriating now, knowing, or at least suspecting, that Nara was completely off the mark. Mina wanted to say something to defend Jaewon against the blatant misjudgment, but she held back, sensing that there was a deeper game at play, one that Jaewon himself seemed to orchestrate with a silent, knowing grace. She began to watch him more closely, not out of suspicion, but out of a growing sense of intrigue and a profound, nascent respect. The man who drove the old Hyundai Elantra was a mystery, and Mina, for the first time in her professional life, felt she was on the verge of uncovering a secret that would shake the very foundations of their corporate world. If you're enjoying this dose of real-life drama and karma, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss our next story. The subtle undercurrents of Jaewon's hidden influence were soon put to the test, albeit indirectly, by an unforeseen development, a minor but persistent issue with the building itself. A persistent metallic clanging had begun to emanate from the plumbing system on their floor, disrupting the quiet hum of productivity. It wasn't just an auditory annoyance. A faint, earthy odor sometimes accompanied the noise, raising concerns about potential leaks or even more serious structural problems. Simultaneously, a more significant issue arose with a ground-floor tenant, a popular cafe whose lease was nearing its end, leading to a tense dispute over renewal terms and proposed rent increases. The cafe owner, a fiery individual, had begun to openly complain about the building's management, attracting local media attention and casting a shadow over the corporate image. Nara Park, ever the opportunist, saw these issues not as problems, but as platforms. She relished the opportunity to showcase her problem-solving skills and, more importantly, her perceived leadership. She loudly complained about the dilapidated infrastructure and the ineffective building management, her voice carrying through the open-plan office, designed to gather maximum attention. "Honestly," she declared during a particularly loud clanging episode, throwing her hands up in exasperation, "this is simply unacceptable. The owner of this building should really invest more in maintenance. It reflects poorly on all of us. How can we project an image of innovation when our very foundation is crumbling?" She took it upon herself to become the self-appointed advocate for the employees, a vocal champion against the absentee landlord. She circulated a petition, gathering signatures from frustrated colleagues, demanding immediate action. Her most ambitious endeavor, however, was drafting a formal complaint. She spent an entire afternoon meticulously crafting a scathing letter filled with corporate jargon and legalistic threats addressed to the building owner. Mina watched Nara's theatrics with a mixture of exasperation and a growing sense of dramatic irony. She knew, or at least strongly suspected, that Nara was railing against Jae-won, the very man who sat a few desks away, calmly observing the unfolding chaos. Nara, however, was oblivious. She saw only the opportunity to impress, to demonstrate her initiative and her ability to tackle problems head-on. She reveled in the attention she garnered, the nods of agreement from colleagues tired of the incessant plumbing noise and the bad press from the cafe dispute. "This letter," Nara announced triumphantly, holding up the thick stack of papers with a flourish, "will detail every single grievance, the plumbing issues, the tenant dispute, the lack of proactive maintenance. Everything. It will demand immediate and comprehensive action. We cannot allow our working environment to deteriorate, nor our corporate image to be tarnished by poor property management." She spoke with such conviction, such unwavering belief in her own righteousness, that for a moment, even Mina almost forgot the profound irony of the situation. She carefully sealed the envelope, addressing it to the owner of Horizon Tower, confident that her forceful rhetoric would compel immediate change. She even made a public show of taking it to the mailroom, ensuring everyone saw her dedication to the cause. Jae-won, observing from his desk, a faint, almost imperceptible curve on his lips, watched her go. He returned to his work, his quiet diligence a stark contrast to Nara's bluster, fully aware that the formal complaint, so meticulously crafted and so confidently dispatched, was not heading to some distant faceless entity, but directly to his own desk. The stage was set, not for a resolution, but for a revelation that would expose Nara's grandstanding for the hollow performance it truly was, and shatter her carefully constructed facade of competence and ambition. The building issues, far from subsiding, escalated dramatically in the days following Nara's formal complaint. The plumbing noise worsened, evolving from a clanging into an intermittent, disconcerting drip, staining a ceiling tile in the marketing department. The ground floor cafe dispute spiraled, with the tenant threatening legal action and staging a public protest outside the building, complete with picket signs and local news cameras. The negative publicity began to impact Horizon Innovation's reputation, drawing unwelcome attention from the corporate board. The atmosphere within the office grew tense, a palpable sense of unease settling over the employees. The issues were no longer minor inconveniences. They were now a direct threat to the company's image and operations. It became clear that only an immediate, decisive intervention from the building's ultimate authority could resolve the escalating crisis. It was Mr. Han, the usually composed HR manager, who delivered the news. His face was etched with stress, his brow furrowed with worry as he called an impromptu all-hands meeting in the main conference room. The usual murmur of office chatter died down as he cleared his throat, his voice tight with urgency. "Attention, everyone. As you are all aware, the issues with the building have reached a critical point. The board has expressed serious concerns. After much deliberation and given the severity of the situation, the owner of the building has agreed to personally attend an urgent meeting tomorrow morning, promptly at 9 a.m., to address these problems directly." A ripple of excited whispers swept through the room. The building owner, a mythical, almost legendary figure to most, a distant entity who usually communicated through layers of management and legal teams. This was unprecedented. Everyone began to speculate. Who was the owner? An old reclusive tycoon? A consortium? The anticipation was electric. Nara Park, seated toward the front, practically vibrated with excitement. Her eyes gleamed, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. This was it. Her moment. Her formal complaint, her petitions, her vocal advocacy. They had worked. The owner was coming, undoubtedly compelled by her forceful intervention. She envisioned herself presenting her case, laying out the problems with eloquent precision, demonstrating her leadership and her unwavering dedication to the company's well-being. She imagined impressing the owner with her sharp intellect and her proactive approach, perhaps even earning a commendation or a promotion. She mentally rehearsed her arguments, perfecting her posture, ready to admonish the absentee owner for their negligence, and then, graciously, offer her solutions. This was not just about the building. It was about Nara Park's ascent. Jae-won Kim, seated quietly in the back, observed the unfolding drama with a detached yet knowing air. He was, as ever, unusually quiet, his presence almost blending into the background. But for those who knew to look, there was a subtle glint in his eyes, a faint, almost imperceptible curve to his lips that hinted at an inner amusement, a deep understanding of the irony that was about to spectacularly unravel. He watched Nara's self-congratulatory preening, her ambitious dreams playing out on her expressive face, and a sense of quiet inevitability settled over him. The stage was set, the audience gathered, and the grand reveal, a moment that would forever alter the dynamics of Horizon Innovations, was now just hours away. The humble facade was about to be dropped, and the true power behind the quiet manager would finally be unveiled, to the shock and utter humiliation of those who had judged him so harshly. The conference room on the executive floor buzzed with a tense, expectant energy the following morning. Every chair was filled, from senior executives to department managers, including Nara Park, who sat ramrod straight, her portfolio clutched in her hands, a determined gleam in her eyes. Mina Lee, seated a few rows behind, felt a nervous flutter in her stomach, a premonition of something significant about to happen. Jae-won Kim, as always, had quietly taken a seat towards the back, his presence almost unnoticed amidst the nervous chatter and anticipation. The air was thick with speculation. Would the owner be a venerable elder statesman of industry, a stern, uncompromising financial mogul? Everyone peered toward the double doors at the front, expecting a grand entrance. Mr. Han, looking even more strained than the day before, stood at the head of the polished mahogany table. He cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping across the expectant faces. "Thank you all for attending this urgent meeting," he began, his voice surprisingly steady. "As you know, we are here to address the critical issues concerning the Horizon Tower building. We are fortunate that the owner has made time in their incredibly busy schedule to be with us today." He paused, a dramatic silence descending upon the room. Every eye was fixed on the doors, waiting. But the doors remained closed. Instead, a figure from within the room itself began to stir. It was Jae-won Kim. He slowly, deliberately, rose from his seat in the back. A ripple of confusion, then murmurs, spread through the room. Why was Jae-won standing? Was he leaving? Was he going to fetch someone? His movements were calm, unhurried, his expression serene, almost detached. He walked, not towards the doors, but towards the front of the room, his quiet steps echoing in the sudden, profound silence. He passed Mina, who stared, her heart pounding, a dawning realization beginning to bloom in her mind. He passed Nara, who, still focused on the doors, barely registered his movement, a flicker of annoyance crossing her face at the perceived distraction. Jae-won reached the head of the table, standing beside Mr. Han, who offered him a subtle, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement. He turned to face the stunned faces of his colleagues. His gaze, usually so gentle and unassuming, now held a quiet authority, a depth of power that had been carefully veiled for so long. He adjusted his glasses, a familiar, mundane gesture, but now imbued with an almost ceremonial weight. Then, in a voice that was calm, clear, and utterly devoid of triumph or arrogance, Jae-won Kim spoke. "I understand there's an issue with my building," he stated, his words cutting through the silence like a sharp blade. "Let's discuss it." A collective gasp, loud and visceral, erupted from the assembled executives and managers. It was a sound of disbelief, of shock, of profound, immediate realization. Faces went pale, jaws dropped, eyes widened in utter astonishment. The revelation hit like a thunderclap, a seismic shift in their understanding of reality. Nara Park's face, which moments before had been alight with ambitious expectation, drained of all color. Her jaw literally dropped open, her meticulously prepared portfolio slipping from her nerveless fingers to clatter softly on the table. Her eyes, wide and disbelieving, darted from Jae-won's calm, authoritative figure to the silent, knowing expression on Mr. Han's face. In that agonizing instant, her entire world fractured. Every snide remark, every dismissive comment about his old car, his lack of ambition, his modest lifestyle, they all flashed before her eyes in a brutal, humiliating montage. The formal complaint, the petition, her bluster, her self-righteous indignation. It all crashed down on her, revealing the profound, unbearable irony of her actions. The man she had ridiculed, the man she had deemed insignificant, was the very owner of the building, the silent, powerful force she had so ignorantly sought to admonish. The weight of her arrogance, her superficiality, and her monumental misjudgment crushed her, leaving her utterly speechless, consumed by a shock so profound it bordered on physical pain. Her carefully constructed facade of competence and ambition crumbled into dust, replaced by an overwhelming, searing wave of humiliation. The immediate aftermath of Jae-won Kim's revelation was a chaotic tableau of stunned silence and nervous whispers. The collective gasp had barely subsided when a cacophony of murmurs erupted, a mix of disbelief, awe, and a palpable sense of unease. Faces darted from Jae-won, now standing with an undeniable aura of authority, to Nara Park, who remained frozen, her mouth agape, her face a mask of utter horror. The air crackled with the electric tension of a truth profoundly, dramatically revealed. Nara, finally regaining some semblance of bodily control, attempted to speak. Her lips trembled, her throat seemed to constrict, and the words that finally emerged were a garbled stammer. Mr. Kim, I'm so... Her apology was a desperate, fumbling attempt, utterly hollow and transparently driven by fear. It lacked any genuine remorse, instead reeking of self-preservation, a desperate scramble to mitigate the catastrophic damage she had inflicted upon herself. She looked around, her eyes pleading, but found no sympathy. Colleagues stared back at her with a mix of pity for her public sue, humiliation and profound disgust at her past behavior. Some averted their gaze, unable to witness the raw agony of her downfall, while others met her eyes with a quiet, unwavering judgment. Mina Lee, watching from her seat, felt a pang of a complex emotion, not exactly pity, but a heavy sense of the inevitable, the just consequence of Nara's unchecked arrogance. Jae-won, ever the picture of dignity, allowed her stammering to subside before speaking again. He did not gloat, did not berate. His voice remained calm. Ms. Park, I believe you had some concerns regarding the building's management and its owner. His tone was even, but the question was a sharp, incisive blade, cutting through the last vestiges of her composure. It was Mr. Han who stepped forward, his voice grave, his expression stern. He had observed Nara's behavior for weeks, her constant undermining of Jae-won, her superficial judgments. Now, with the truth laid bare, his duty was clear. Ms. Park, Mr. Han began, his voice carrying the weight of his official capacity. Your conduct over the past several weeks, culminating in a formal complaint filled with baseless accusations and public disparagement towards a colleague, and indeed towards the very owner of this building, is entirely unprofessional, and frankly, intolerable. He paused, letting his words sink in. Horizon Innovations prides itself on respect, integrity, and a culture of genuine collaboration. Your actions have demonstrated a profound lack of these core values. Nara tried again, her voice a desperate whisper. But I didn't know. The excuse hung feebly in the air, recognized by everyone as a pathetic evasion. Ignorance was no longer a shield. It was an indictment of her character. Ignorance, Mr. Han retorted, his voice hardening, does not absolve one of responsibility for disrespectful and demeaning behavior. We expect all our employees, especially those in leadership roles, to uphold the highest standards of professionals, conduct and interpersonal respect. Your disrespect towards Mr. Kim, both as a colleague and as the building's owner, makes your position at this company untenable. The words hung in the air, cold and definitive. Her career at Horizon Innovations was effectively over. There was no appeal, no negotiation. The truth of her actions, amplified by the shocking revelation of Jae-won's identity, had painted her into a corner from which there was no escape. She was given her notice. The formalities, handled swiftly and discreetly by Mr. Han after the meeting was adjourned. Nara Park, the ambitious, stylish newcomer who had arrived with such a flourish, left the company in a humiliating haze, her grand aspirations shattered, her carefully constructed image irrevocably tarnished, and her exit as quiet and ignominious as her entrance had been loud and boastful. The impact of her karma was swift, brutal, and undeniably thoroughly deserved. Did this story resonate with you? Or maybe you just love a good karma tale? Either way, smash that like button to show your support. In the days that followed Nara Park's swift and ignominious departure, an almost reverential quiet settled over Horizon Innovations. The shock of Jae-won Kim's revelation had given way to a profound respect, bordering on awe. He, however, remained the same composed, dignified man, handling the aftermath with a grace that only further cemented his colleagues' admiration. He called another meeting, this time a smaller, more intimate gathering with his direct reports and key department heads, including Mina Lee, to address the lingering questions and the palpable shift in the office dynamic. I understand that my decision to maintain a humble facade may have caused some confusion and perhaps even some discomfort. Jae-won began, his voice soft but firm. My reasons were multifaceted. Firstly, I wanted to understand the company, its operations, and its people from the ground up, without the distorting lens of preferential treatment. I believe true leadership requires an intimate understanding of the daily realities faced by every employee. He paused, his gaze sweeping across their faces, acknowledging the silent understanding that now passed between them. Secondly, I wanted to foster an environment where character and competence were valued above all else, not superficial displays of wealth or status. I wanted to truly connect with my employees, to see them for who they are, not for how they perceived me. His explanation resonated deeply, offering a powerful lesson in humility and authentic leadership that transcended mere corporate strategy. Nara's departure was a stark reminder of the consequences of judging by appearances. Her desk, once adorned with designer accessories, was now conspicuously bare, a silent monument to her profound misjudgment. The general sentiment in the office was one of relief, mingled with a quiet satisfaction that justice, in its own unique way, had been served. The plumbing issues were swiftly addressed, and the tenant dispute was resolved with a quiet efficiency that spoke volumes about Jae-won's true capabilities. Mina Lee found herself seeking out Jae-won for a private conversation a few days later. "Mr. Kim," she began, a genuine warmth in her voice, "I just wanted to say, I truly admire your character, your wisdom, your patience. It's truly inspiring. I always suspected there was more to you, but I never imagined." She trailed off, a slight blush rising to her cheeks. Jae-won smiled, a genuine open smile that reached his eyes. "Thank you, Mina. Your integrity and your quiet support did not go unnoticed." There was a new current in their interaction, a deeper understanding, a bridge built on shared observation and mutual respect. The office, having weathered the storm, began to settle into a new equilibrium. The culture subtly shifted, becoming more appreciative of quiet competence and less swayed by outward show. Jae-won continued his work, now with his true identity known, yet still maintaining an approachable, grounded demeanor. The old Elantra, still in its spot in the parking lot, no longer drew snide remarks, but respectful, knowing glances. Its presence now symbolized a powerful lesson, a reminder that true value often lies beneath the surface, hidden from the gaze of the superficial. However, as the dust settled and the daily rhythm resumed, a new, unsettling undercurrent began to stir. Nara Park, though physically gone, had left a residue. Reports from the corporate grapevine indicated she wasn't taking her dismissal quietly. Whispers of a vengeful online campaign, fueled by her wounded pride, began to circulate, threatening to expose confidential company information. Simultaneously, a seemingly innocuous detail from her formal complaint, a minor, easily dismissed mention of an old, unused storage area in the building's sub-basement, now re-emerged in Jae-won's mind. The contractor had briefly mentioned it when discussing the plumbing issues. A space he'd noted was unusually secured, almost forgotten. Jae-won, now with his full attention on the building's intricacies, felt a prickle of unease. He had assumed it was merely an old utility room, but something about the contractor's tone and Nara's passing, unverified comment sparked a new line of inquiry. The impactful karma may have struck Nara, but it seemed her actions, both intentional and accidental, had unknowingly opened a new, perhaps more perilous chapter for Horizon Innovations and for Jae-won himself. He knew he had to investigate that sub-basement, a forgotten corner of his own building, where an unexpected secret, possibly far greater than his own, might be lurking. The aftershocks of Nara Park's dramatic exit rippled through Horizon Innovations, settling into a new, quieter cadence. The initial awe surrounding Jae-won Kim's revelation had matured into a profound, almost sacred respect. The office, once subtly influenced by superficial judgments and the silent hierarchy of material possessions, now breathed a different air. It was an atmosphere cleansed, purified by the stark contrast between arrogance and integrity. Jae-won, true to his nature, remained the unwavering anchor of this transformation. He continued his work with the same quiet diligence, his presence a constant living lesson in humility, his unassuming demeanor now understood not as a lack of ambition, but as its highest form. The old Elantra, still gracing its customary spot in the parking lot, had shed its former identity as a symbol of lack of ambition. Instead, it stood as a powerful, silent monument to the enduring truth that character, not cars, defined the man. It was a daily reminder, a gentle, persistent whisper, that beneath the surface of the ordinary often lay the extraordinary. Yet, even as the office found its new equilibrium, the unsettling undercurrent from Nara's last desperate acts lingered. Whispers of her online campaign, fueled by wounded pride and a thirst for vengeance, still circulated, threatening to breach the company's carefully guarded reputation. And then there was the sub-basement, that forgotten corner of the building, a seemingly innocuous detail from Nara's hastily drafted complaint, which had resonated with an odd, discordant note in Jae-won's meticulous mind. He recalled the contractor's brief mention of an unusually secured area, a space that, in the rush of the building crisis, had been easily dismissed. Now, with the immediate fires quenched, Jae-won's keen intellect, unburdened by his carefully maintained facade, focused on this anomaly. One crisp afternoon, Jae-won descended into the building's depths. He wasn't alone. Mr. Han, whose quiet deference towards Jae-won had deepened into an almost familial loyalty, accompanied him. The sub-basement was a cavernous expanse, a labyrinth of concrete and shadow, choked with the dust of decades and the silent hum of forgotten machinery. Pipes snaked across the low ceiling like metallic vines, dripping occasionally into stagnant puddles. The air was cool, heavy, and carried the faint metallic scent of age and neglect. It was a place where time had stalled, a forgotten artery of the bustling corporate heart above. They navigated through a maze of decommissioned boilers and abandoned storage cages, their footsteps echoing eerily in the vast space. Finally, they reached it, a heavily reinforced steel door, unlike any other in the building, tucked away behind a stack of rusted ventilation ducts. Its surface bore the faint scars of attempted forced entry, a detail that sent a prickle of unease down Jae-won's spine. This was no mere utility closet. With a key he had meticulously kept, a relic from the building's original blueprints, Jae-won unlocked the heavy door. It groaned open, revealing a small, surprisingly intact server room. Rows of outdated server racks stood like silent sentinels covered in a thick layer of dust. This was a legacy data center, long since superseded and believed to be fully decommissioned, its contents presumably migrated. But a faint, almost imperceptible glow from a single indicator light on one of the server racks suggested otherwise. Upon closer inspection, the truth began to unravel. There were signs of recent intrusion. Dust had been disturbed, and a loose panel on one of the racks revealed a crude, makeshift connection. Mr. Han, his face grim, pointed to a small, almost invisible USB drive port that had been tampered with. It was clear Nara had discovered this forgotten trove. Digital activity logs, meticulously retrieved by the IT security team Jae-won immediately summoned, confirmed their suspicions. Nara had managed to gain limited access, her desperation driving her to exploit any vulnerability. Her intent, to extract confidential company archives and leverage them in her vengeful online campaign, was laid bare. She hadn't succeeded in exfiltrating anything substantial, her technical skills evidently not matching her ambition, but the attempt was undeniable. Jae-won, ever the strategist, handled the breach with characteristic discretion. There would be no public spectacle, no further drama to fuel Nara's vindictive narrative. Legal counsel was quietly engaged. A meticulously crafted cease and desist letter, backed by irrefutable digital forensics, was delivered to Nara. It outlined her attempted cyber trespass and warned of severe legal repercussions if she dared to proceed with her online threats. The message was clear, precise, and utterly devoid of emotion, a reflection of Jae-won's firm but fair hand. Nara, faced with the overwhelming evidence and the silent, unyielding power of the man she had so foolishly underestimated, retreated. Her online campaign, stillborn, withered into oblivion, another casualty of her own hubris. The final threat, a last gasp of her wounded pride, was neutralized, not with a bang, but with a quiet, decisive click of a digital lock. With the final shadows of Nara's presence dispelled, Horizon Innovations truly began to flourish under Jae-won's quiet leadership. The culture shifted profoundly. The previous emphasis on outward appearances and status symbols waned, replaced by a genuine appreciation for authenticity, integrity, and merit. Employees, once wary of corporate ladders and superficial networking, now focused on genuine collaboration and meaningful contributions. Mina Lee, in particular, blossomed in this new environment. Her quiet diligence and unwavering ethical compass, once subtly overshadowed by Nara's aggressive ambition, now shone brightly. She became a trusted advisor to Jae-won, her insights valued, her presence a testament to the new meritocratic ideals. Her interactions with Jae-won were built on a foundation of profound mutual respect, a silent understanding forged in the crucible of shared experience. She saw in him not just an owner but a mentor, a living embodiment of the values she herself held dear. Jae-won, for his part, remained unchanged by the revelations of his true identity or the newfound reverence of his colleagues. He continued to lead by example, his humility a constant, gentle force. He occasionally still drove the old Hyundai Elantra, its worn seats and familiar engine, a comforting echo of his chosen path. But now, when it appeared in the parking lot, it no longer invited judgment or snide remarks. Instead, it garnered knowing glances, a subtle nod of respect, a quiet acknowledgement of the profound lesson it represented. It was a symbol, not of lack, but of an abundance of wisdom, a reminder that true value often lies beneath the surface, hidden from the gaze of the superficial, waiting to be discovered by those with discerning eyes. The story of Nara Park and Jae-won Kim became an enduring legend within Horizon Innovations, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones to new hires, a potent lesson in humility and perception. It resonated far beyond the walls of the corporate offices, a timeless moral echoing the importance of looking beyond the veil of appearances. True wealth, the narrative proclaimed, was not measured in luxury cars or designer labels, but in the unshakable foundation of character, the quiet dignity of integrity, and the genuine connections forged through respect. Jae-won Kim, the unassuming owner of Horizon Tower, continued to lead, not just a company, but by example, ensuring that Horizon Innovations embodied the very values he had so quietly, so patiently, and so impactfully championed. The grand irony had played out, the impactful karma delivered, and in its wake, a deeper, more profound truth had emerged, forever etched into the heart of the company. True riches lie within. Loved this story? Don't go anywhere. We've got more incredible tales waiting for you right here on your screen. Check out these videos next.